It's time now for a look at the big story trends on social media this week, and we say hello to communication strategist Lorato Tshenkeng for his take. Lorato, good evening. It's always lovely to talk to you. Let's kick things off with this 22 million rand flag furore swirling around the Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa. We'll take a quick listen to this and then we'll discuss it straight after.
Sure.
Mthethwa comes to me. He says, President, please tell me when I can call you. So I said, I'm in a cabinet committee meeting. We'll talk afterwards. So I call him back, and he says, President, this flag thing, which is such a wonderful initiative, and it seems that our people are not happy with it. Can know? Of course they are not happy. What should I do? Can I cancel this?
Cancel this. Probably the best piece of advice he's ever heard. I mean, what the actual, as my children would say, Lorato?
Yes, Iman, good evening to you and good evening to the viewers. Although that moment by the president, it's something that people laughed at, I don't think that it's a joke and we should be laughing at it, precisely because, this was a cabinet decision that was approved as far back as February, and the department, the presidency confirmed as much sometime this week. But after the interview with the other station on Tuesday, with JJ Tabane, with Minister Nathi Mthethwa, he really got South Africans talking, precisely because, one, he came across as somebody who could not explain what the motive and the intention of the initiative was, but two, what South Africans could take away from it. Thirdly, South Africans are complaining about simple basic stuffs as, the cooking oil. The price is ridiculous. There's now a report that petrol will be going up by another 3 or so odd rands, right? And these are the things that when South Africans think about and worry about, and they hear a project that looks and feels like a vanity project, of course, there's then the outrage that we've seen throughout social media.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the terms, and there's some of the tweets that are coming up over there, some of the terms that were being used and leveled against the minister were about being tone deaf. And a lot of what you were saying, those themes of, the needs in our society are so much greater. There was a lot of discussion, of course, comparatively about other countries that have erected, sort of large monuments for this or that reason, and how in many ways it was just not consonant with where South Africa is right now.
Yes. So, and of course, somebody who's very popular on social media, on Twitter in particular, because she's a broadcaster, somebody who has a voice from a media platform. Miss Pennylebanese went onto Twitter, raising the issue of while, some of us, and I think she was really directly speaking to Bonang, because Bonang Matheba, who also has a huge following, right? She's one of the most followed tweets in this interwebs, and she raised the fact that is it possible that as South Africans we are responding out of ignorance? We are not asking questions such as, did the Eiffel? What was the motivation behind the Eiffel Tower and many other monuments like those, right? And South Africans really descended on Penny precisely because not only was she sounding like she was defending what looked like a vanity project, but herself, she was behaving like somebody who was going or had ulterior motives, whether, benefiting directly or indirectly from, whether it's patronage from the minister himself or even from the department. So that element really got South Africans hot under the collar. And generally, one of the things that I have observed, and many of us have observed, is that when people have made mistakes Iman, somebody like Pennylebanese, they hardly ever they have the courage to say, listen, this was a moment of poor judgment. I, should not have put out what I did, and I take full responsibility, and therefore I delete the tweets, and I apologize to you as South Africans. Of course, she went on to rub the salt into the wound, where many people called her out, celebrities and people with a bigger following alike.
And I saw that her name, of course, was trending. I think both those topics were trending for more than 24 hours, which is quite interesting. There was a lot of chatter around that. Talk to us about Musi.
So Musi went on to the ever-popular MacG podcast, which, it is quite a notorious platform. I'm not a fan of the platform, but that is not for me to judge, really. And while he was there, of course, the expectation was that in typical MacG style of line of questioning, he would ask him things that are quite controversial, right? One of the questions was around racism in particular, whether he believes that Helen Zille is racist. He really struggled with that question. He was swallowing his words, and he did not come out clearly. He was really and umming throughout that question. But the heated moment of that was when he spoke about Operation Dudula, and of course the leader of Operation Dudula, Nhlanhla Lux, took him on, right? And it was out of that exchange. Of course, Musi, one as a politician, but as somebody who has a huge following himself, is known for what many people know as club backs, right? The recent was with a popular DJ from Tembisa. And now he was doing it with Nhlanhla Lux. And out of that exchange between the two of them, it has created a lot of conversation, precisely because, the issue around immigration and migration in South Africa has been a real issue, unfortunately, highly politicized. And most unfortunate, we know the story of Elvis Nyati, and we know the story of many others who have lost their lives as a result of the kind of sentiment that comes out of these conversations.
Yeah, and we are sharing with our viewers the tweets made by Nhlanhla Lux in the aftermath of that interview, and our viewers can read it there. I think there's another. I think there's more than one tweet, but basically saying that politicians hide behind fancy words, and you can see the second tweet there. So that, of course, was generating a lot of heat. And, as you said in the beginning, Lorato, some of these things, I mean, I approach that question around the flag with a bit of a smile myself, because it's just, you kind of, you're drawn into this swirl of incredulity at the outrageous things that are being proposed, especially in a context like ours, where we're dealing with very, very real issues. And as a lot of people were saying, with regard to the flag furore, that money could be better spent elsewhere in terms of actual livelihoods of people, particularly people for whom that portfolio is responsible. But let's kind of lay down the flag erection issue and the Musi issue, and go back to another serious topic, which is around the repo rate, that also generating a lot of conversation. Coupled with the fuel price hike, this is just like living in the land of insults.
Yes. No. And absolutely. And I guess, when South Africans, or at least you see people around in some countries around the world protesting, against the rising inflation, and it then shows that it's not only hitting South Africans, but people are even, intentional on going to the streets to protest against it. And there's 0.5% increase on the interest rate. Many banking institutions, they had shown how much, if you have a mortgage bond, how much it was going to affect you. But we also know that it's not only about those who have debt, right? To a great extent, whenever there are such increases, they then have a trickle-down effect. And of course, with the other issue that had come out earlier in the week about the middle class, in terms of them spending, those who earn about 180,000, spending their monies 5 days after, or their money finishes 5 days after paycheck. The question is, with all of these increases, are we now going to be at 4 days, 3 days, or, even at the point where literally we are almost feeling like we are working for free?
Yeah, and I mean, if you read that last tweet now, I want to just ask our team to just keep it on a little bit longer, but it's basically saying, we're buckling under the rising costs. How are we going to absorb this latest, and Farida says, no doubt not final, increase in the repo rate? Does it factor into their thinking at all? We're not all in high-paying government jobs, And it speaks again, Lorato, to the tone of what you were saying in the beginning. Had this been a context where the coffers were full and, there was a surplus in treasury and we could do all of these, these other kind of nice-to-have projects, it might have been a different situation. But when you factor it into a week where the Monetary Policy Committee is making decisions like these, which go straight to the heart and the pocket, because again, with the combination of the fuel price hike, the price of food is going to get higher because transport costs are going to be going up.
Yes.
And so tone deaf doesn't even begin to describe when ministers, make certain decisions, or when decisions are made about things that are not affecting us in our daily lives, or that have an impact in our daily lives.
Not at all, Iman. And I guess one of the questions that we have to really contend with as South Africans is, are we just okay with understanding that, for instance, the Reserve Bank, indicates that as part of their mandate, one of, or at least the instruments they use is inflation targeting, right? Is it working for South Africans, right? Because it is not a Reserve Bank, it is the South African Reserve Bank. And what kind of reviews ought to be looked at in terms of just taking that into consideration. Of course, there are a number of institutions that are likely to, they are happy. Banks are happy. Anyone who is, lending money, they are okay with the situation as it is. And those are the ones that we know that generally have, a stronger voice in terms of, or at least power and leverage in terms of being. And the question should be, as South Africans, which levers can we then pull to even influence, or at least, get our voices heard? Because this is becoming untenable, Iman. And whether, Kganyago is doing his work as per the mandate, and he's going to get the performance bonus because he did exceptionally well according to the mandate. The critical question is, what are the social impacts on South Africans? And I doubt that he's likely to say that, listen, I have left South Africans better off while doing my job in the best way that I was responsible to.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask that question tonight, I suppose, the answer might be overwhelmingly negative. But with a lot of things, you've got to take the long view as well in terms of, the period of time that the rate was held back, during COVID. At some point, a lot of these things are going to catch up with us along the way. It couldn't have come, I suppose, at a worse time. But when is a rise in the repo rate a welcome thing, Lorato? I don't think we'd ever have a good response to that one. But thank you for talking to us. Thanks for watching out for what's happening in social media. That was communication strategist Lorato Tshenkeng.